Hi everyone, and welcome to the next installment of this build of Dragon's 1/35th scale M3A1 US half track. As you can see from this short video, the construction phase of this project is now complete, with the rear end now being done. Had lots of fun doing this, so if you'd like to grab yourself a chair, have yourself a drink, and let's go do some modelling. Now, the first decision we had to make was the seating in the rear end. Now, very nicely detailed from Dragon. However, it is very much the factory look. Doesn't look lived in whatsoever. So the squeaky bum decision was made to take the seats out so that we could add a little bit of realism. So we had to get the old Dremel out and hack away at the seating area. At this stage, I was hoping just to get the seats out, but unfortunately, it did turn out that all of the detailing had to come out because it was just too much for a fiddly job. So with the seats gone, it's a matter of getting the snips, cutting off all of the excess plastic, and then what I had to do is to scrape it all back using files and sanders to give myself a nice smooth surface. And then once that had been done, I added on some very thin plastic ard to both the sides. However, because of the damage incurred, a little bit of filling had to be done, as you can see up in the top right-hand corner, and also underneath a fair amount of filling had to be done, because at this stage I wasn't too sure what would actually be seen. However, these two plastic parts did help a lot in covering up a lot of the area, but work still needed to be done on the underside. So on the flip side, started putting in the seating areas, again using different thicknesses of plastic ard. Now, because it's a uniform shape, I used the RP Tools guillotine to make sure that all the parts were cut to exactly the same size. So the seat retainers were first put in with some very small micro strip. And then once that had been done, I had to turn my attention to the hinges themselves using styrene rod and strip. And once the actual hinges were put in place, these were then embellished using the 0.5 mm pewter rivets. And at the end, all in all, I was really pleased with how that had turned out. Added detail was used with the Meng nuts 0.8 mm ones. So once that had all been done, I'd now had a blank canvas where I could build some life into it. But first off, we needed to add on the sides and the rear. Now the fit wasn't a great one because this is a 3-in-1 kit, so some of the detail had to be scraped off so that the sides could go in correctly. However, once that was done, it was all clamped into place and glued in and was left overnight. And the fit wasn't too bad at all. I didn't have any issues really with this. The actual resin stowage from Panzer that was added on. No real issues here. Had to be scraped back in places because again, this is designed for the Scout car. But I was really happy with the fit. Now, I wanted to add some detailing on the rifles, as this is a very detail-heavy build. So using some pie tin foil strips and also the Arbor PE set buckles. I started making up the belts for each of the rifles. Those four together. Just a matter of putting a buckle at each end and then folding the foil over and gluing that in place. Altogether, they're around about 24 mm long, and there was a central buckle in the middle as well. And these were fixed in place by just drilling two small holes on the underside of the rifle and then using CA glue and leaving it to dry. And I was really pleased with how they turned out and looking forward to getting those painted up. As far as the radio box goes, I swapped out the plastic part and used the photo etch part. Big mistake was actually gluing it in place because it's going to be a nightmare now to detail paint this. However, the actual kit itself is really smart. I'm very pleased with the detailing on it. Next, we had to put in the guide rails on the underside using the Voyager set. The actual clamps very small and fiddly, but Voyager did supply the zero point 0.3 and 0.45 mm rod, which was a great help. So these were glued in place, and then once they had been dried out, it was a matter of then threading in the zero point 0.5 mil guide rails. Quite a simple process, just using the tweezers as you can see here. And then once in place, they were glued in again using CA glue. And I really like this feature. A bit of a nightmare to paint, but all in all, is certainly looks the part. There's one seat in the back, which I decided to cannibalize again, like I did with the front ones, again, just to add a bit of detail. Nipped off one of the corners to show a bit of damage, which will look better once painted. And again, this particular area is extremely flimsy. A great care and attention had to be taken because it can get knocked quite a bit. Now, with the sides on, I could turn my attention to the underside, and as you can see, lots of injector marks which needed to be sorted out. I took all the handles off the side and replaced them with PE ones. As far as the Panzer part goes, there was a little bit of mully put filling that needs to be done, and I also put it in some plasticard strip there as well, just to fill in the gaps, and also on the handrail on the side. But all in all, no real issues here at all. And also with the fuel cans, you just need to add on the grab handles from the plastic parts in the spares box. So yeah, really pleased with how that turned out. The canvas sheet, yes, I know it should be at the top, but I liked it at the bottom because it made a nice feature. And there was a little milliput seat, which was a prototype for what was to come. So with the underside, I used the Mr. Surfacer 500 in the usual way with the stippling effect, and once dried, that was all sanded down, and this is now a fantastic base for which I can now do all of the mud and pigment work further down the line. So really pleased with how all of that has now been covered up. The mud guards, swapped them out and used PE ones. There's a little reflector there which was updated using some plastic discs. The aerial holders, pain in the backside, they keep falling off. So we'll see how we progress with that. But all in all, really pleased with how the backside was now looking. So with that blank canvas, I can now start adding in some stowage. This is all from the spares drawer, some value gear there, as well as Panzer. And it's really just let your imagination run wild where you feel that the crew people would actually put all their bits and bobs. Fortunately, there wasn't any mistakes in the back end, so I don't have to cover anything up. So I can have a free hand of where everything goes. So really pleased with how it was all progressing at this stage. And this will give you a rough idea of what I've decided to go with. Some boots, some bags, helmets, etc. So what we had to do now was to make the seats themselves. I constructed a little jig, which was measured out for the width of the 5 seats and then doubled up so there'd be 10 seats altogether. And then I mixed up the green stuff using talc because I didn't want this to stick to the frame at all. And then it's just a matter of squeezing it all in, adding that little bit of texture there, which is always a great help, and making sure you got your gloves on because you don't want any fingerprints at all. So once that had all been squeezed in, it was just a matter of pulling the jig apart, and then that would give me the solid block of green stuff for which I could then cut up for the seats. First thing was just to tidy it all up, just using a very damp brush just to clean all the edges and make sure it's all fairly smooth. And then what I did, I used the PE bending tool just to start measuring out the size of each of the cushions. I had this notion at this time that I could make them all individually the same. It didn't turn out to be the case, but it was all fairly close enough. It was work in progress, as they say. So with the strips done, they will cut back down to size, and then once I had the 10 cushions, I got myself a wet brush and I started to round off the edges to make them less square shape and take off some of the excess talc. And there we have one that is now all ready to be put in place and start to add some texture and some sculpting. So as you can see, they're all fairly much the same size. It was then a matter of covering them all in talc again, because I didn't want these to stick to the surface, because I'd made the decision at this time that these will all be painted off the build. And then that was put in place, and as you can see, it's far too large, so these were cut back, trimmed back until I was happy with the size. So first off, in the corner, I put a couple of spares, which would have been the ones in front of the radio set. I also added some on the side with a couple of boots. Now, if you look at research photos, there is some sort of like a square top to each of the cushions, and then they're squashed down. So I just made a little template and pushed them in down. I was really pleased with how that came out. And then it was just a matter of getting the sculpting tools and just adding on some little creases here and there. The boots, they're just off an old plastic figure and drilled out. It gives you an idea of the layout that I was now after. And I was really pleased with how that was now looking a lot more lived in and a lot more realistic. And that's how it's all going to be looking eventually, all being well. Some added detail on the interior box, lovely clasps in the Voyager set, so it was a no-brainer to get those added on. Really pleased with how they turned out. Now, the actual rifle holders, the PE ones, as you can see, are atrocious. I couldn't get my head around those at all, so swapped them up and I put the original kit parts in. Turning our attention to the outside, we have some landmine holders which were put in place. As you can see here, I did a bit of a dry fit at this stage and realised the join was horrendous. So some work and attention and some filling was having to be done there. But I can see that is going to be a big problem for me further down the line. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Also, there was some detailing added on the sidebars there. I also decided to do a fuel can holder based on research photos, just using some plastic strip and a couple of little rivets, and the three fuel cans sat in there really nicely. So really pleased with how that turned out. Then I started to add on some outside detailing with some of the stowage. Also, we got the machine gun holder there as well, and some ammo boxes which came from Panzer, and also some Echelon decals just to add some detail. Put a little green stuff sheet along the bottom as well. Again, this is all based on research photos. Again, it's just added detailing, added interest. And as you can see there, the PE handles have been done. So with the rear end done, I had to turn my attention to the front end and get that clear glass sorted out. I had to rip everything off the front and then just use different grades of sanding stick to sand off all of the damage, all of the scratches, all of the marks, etc. And then it was all finally buffed up with the Infinity. And then once done, before I did anything else, I did what I should have done right from the start and mask off the plastic areas. And that's all now ready for painting. A little bit of extra detail at the front using some chain and some wire from the spares drawer. We made a bit of cabling there, so really pleased with how that was now looking. And returning to the interior, I just made a little handset. Probably not accurate, but it's just added detail which looks the part. And that was made from 2mm fuse wire. So there we are. That's nearly 100 pieces that have got to be painted up. I'm wondering whether to box it all up and send it off to Gav to do for me, but I don't think he'd be too impressed. So looking forward to getting my teeth into all of this painting. It's a lot to be done and should keep me out of trouble for a while. And for those of you who are interested, this is how I keep all of the dust, etc., off my models while I'm painting them with the old Jacobs cream crackers. Because it's very important to keep your paintwork as clean as you can from dust. So there we have it, everyone. Gives you an idea of some of the ideas that are going on in my head to try and get this uh, model to look as lifelike as possible. I've had a lot of fun with the build, and I appreciate all of the support that you've given me during the construction phase. I'm now on to the painting phase, and that will be the next video update of how we start with the painting. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much indeed to all of my subscribers for your continued support of my work in the channel. It's greatly appreciated, and happy modeling, everyone.